listening with my heart, not just my ears.
Mhm.
And what he told me was I had been him in my most recent past life. And it was actually a shared parallel life because uh, we were both alive at the same time for about 40 years. So that's a lot of overlap, but that's possible for two major reasons. Number one, our higher self, our soul, has so much energy, can
Mhm.
choose uh, to incarnate into multiple lives at the same time because it's just an opportunity to learn more. So I believe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And for those of you who are here the first time, welcome. I am Sharon Sananda Kumaro, your host. Welcome to Ascension Gateway. And today I am talking with Wendy Williams. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Sharon.
Great to see you again. Wendy's been on my show for actually a few times now.
Well, thank you so much for having me back. Always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
I'm really excited to talk about your new book, Regression Healing II, Joe and Marilyn. Do you mind? I have
Yes.
a Kindle version, so I can't hold it up.
You can't hold up your Kindle version.
Well, I can hold it up, but it's not as
So
beautiful as that.
here's what the cover looks like.
Nice. I can't wait to talk about it. And Joe and Marilyn's a little bit obvious, right?
Yes. Yes, particularly in combination that we're referring to Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe.
Hmm. Yeah. What a ride. I read your book and thank you for writing it because I mean, Joe and Marilyn, of course, are huge for the story, but there's so much more there that you share and intimate stuff. So I have to applaud you for sharing some things that, it took a lot of courage to
It wasn't the
share.
most comfortable, but that's how I think we know we're doing our work if we're willing to share things that make us uncomfortable at times. I'm a life path 33, and that's the journey is let go of other people think and just be willing to do your best to stand in your heart and just own who you are and just go from there.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what's so amazing about that, and I've learned that with we published our book around the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
We were
so
right on the same weekend. That was so fun, Sharon. And I didn't know you were writing a book. You didn't know I was getting ready to publish. And you were on the Friday, and I was on the Monday, and it was right with one of those major eclipses.
mhm. Yeah. And there's so many things in your book too that resonated with me. And so yeah, I felt a lot of emotion with it definitely and felt the healing as it was happening during as you were writing it and during the experiences. So with that being said, let's dive in.
Sure. So what happened was it was about 10 years ago at this point, and I was working at that time with my first spiritual teacher, and I just started having, I could hear Joe DiMaggio. And I had an instinct of who it was. I'm fortunate to be very clairaudient. That's my strongest psychic ability. Yes, I feel, I sense, I know. I have some clairvoyance, but my strongest is I hear really, really well. And it's just such a blessing to hear guides and ascended masters and angels. And I kept seeing Marilyn Monroe clairvoyantly. And I'm like, okay, this is just odd. What is with all this Joe and Marilyn? And I mean, certainly I knew who they were, but I'm Canadian, so I didn't grow up with them the same way and have the same direct experience that someone a little bit older might have also because also they just predated us when they were born and when they died. But I just Joe just felt so familiar. He felt like home, and I would feel him typically kind of like come in like through my left thigh, and then I would just hear him talking to me and telling me things and sharing things and helping me with things. And I would be seeing Marilyn, as I said, and it just did cause some confusion. I know he felt like a really old friend. I'd had some knowledge and feeling and experiences of him that dated all the way back to childhood.
Mm.
And because he became a spokesman for Mr. Coffee and some other things, he just was on television, so I'd see him as a kid because of course his baseball career was over by the time had wrapped up by the time I was born in the early 60s. But what was really interesting about it, Sharon, was I did this with nothing else I saw on television, any other commercial. But when I would see Joe, it was like I was just like so on high alert, and I would be like critiquing it. And I would also be like I knew how it was going to go. Or occasionally I would hear or see him on television, like at something to do with, baseball, like there'd be, a gathering. And my grandfather had played minor league baseball. So he was a big baseball fan, but there just was like this heightened awareness when I would watch those commercials or those appearances, and I would just be paying attention to, well, how did he do? Did he make his point? Was that clear? Did the interviewer follow up well? Or what did I think of the commercial? And like I said, I had this interest in nothing else. So there just was this like sense of like an energy flow or a connection I never knew what to make of until 10 years ago. So what brought things to a head was my spiritual teacher texted me in October of 2016, and I just got this short little text from her, and all it said was, Joe wants to talk to you. Are you
Mhm.
ready?
Mm.
And I was
Now,
like,
if I can interrupt you for just 1 second. So
sure.
Joe DiMaggio was a baseball player for the Yankees, right?
Yes, for the New York
Okay.
Yankees for his
He
entire
was right. He was a famous baseball player, and he was married to Marilyn Monroe for a while.
he
For
was.
okay, for people watching who don't know who he is,
Yes.
or
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
okay.
filling that in. Exactly. She was his second wife, and he was her third husband, and they became the ultimate power couple of their era and their time, because he was so well known not only for his baseball history, but he became a spokesperson, and he became a wonderful philanthropist and raised money for children's hospitals. He just really became this beloved figure in American history. Some people say he was the most, famous figure, or one of the most famous figures of his century. So that was
Mm, mm.
big. And that was part of why I was like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yeah,
I want to get this right, because this is a really well-known historic figure. And
and
Marilyn
relationship as
Monroe,
well.
yes, and Marilyn Monroe, of course, was just so well known and so beloved for, having been originally like a pinup girl and a calendar girl, and then having become an actress and a comedian. And I mean, she could sing, she could dance, she could act. She was just very distinctive, and just, her voice, she was just very, very well known. So when the two of them started dating, and then when they got married, it really had a lot of public spotlight on it. So I think that kind of sets the stage.
Sure. Thank you.
Of course. So I received this text of, Joe wants to speak with you. Are you ready? And I was like, oh boy. Oh boy. No, I'm not ready, but I know it's time. So I put down my phone. I was in the kitchen when I got that little text message, and I just went straight into my bedroom, and I meditated for about half an hour and just really worked to clear my energy. and bring in my guides and say, okay, what does Joe DiMaggio want to say to me? I'm listening. I'm listening with my heart, not just my ears.
Mhm.
And what he told me was I had been him in my most recent past life. And it was actually a shared parallel life because uh, we were both alive at the same time for about 40 years. So that's a lot of overlap, but that's possible for two major reasons. Number one, our higher self, our soul, has so much energy, can
Mhm.
choose uh, to incarnate into multiple lives at the same time because it's just an opportunity to learn more. So I believe and to progress more quickly. So I believe that if you're doing that as a strategy, that you're going to choose lives that are very different. So here we have American male, incredible athlete, beloved public figure. And here we have unknown, Canadian woman, least athletic person on the planet. So, there was just a lot of contrast. And he's over 6 feet tall. I'm 5'2". There just was a lot of contrast between the lives. And so one of the things I said to him, I was like, okay, I hear you, I feel you. This is a lot. I understand it now. And I said, so now I understand why I was hearing and feeling you and why I was seeing Marilyn. So he's like, yes, you were just simply looking through my eyes. And Marilyn and I had such a special relationship for 10, 12 years. I mean, it wasn't just the brief marriage and the dating. They had a lot of different relationships together, Sharon, that I think it might help listeners to understand. They
Mhm.
had dated for a long time because they chose to go slowly because they were trying to sort out were they meant to be friends or were they going to proceed as lovers and to get married? Because Joe was older than Marilyn. He was about 12 years older than her, and he had just retired from baseball right when her career was starting to take off. So she's more like in her, mid 20s. So they're kind of like at different places, in what's going on with career and what's going on with fame. And she's just starting to step onto the stage and he's, ramping it down,
Mhm.
trying to heal his body from all those years as a professional athlete and kind of looking at, okay, what's next in my life? So they really had multiple relationships. They did marry. It was a short marriage. I mean, it unfortunately did not go well. And after that marriage had ended, she remarried. Joe never married again. And but they, after her second or her third divorce, she recuperated from that, recovered from that, and she and Joe got back in touch again. And they rekindled the flame, and they were actually planning to remarry. And that's when things really went sideways, and she ended up with that shocking sudden death, and
Mhm.
that raised so many questions of what caused it. And he actually ended up burying her because she didn't have family, so she had only a half sister. And I as Joe, I contacted her and said, "Do you want me to take care of the arrangements?" And she said, yes, that would be a relief. So I, as Joe, actually ended up burying her on what was to be our second wedding day.
Wow.
So that just had so much heartbreak around it.
Mhm.
And I think was just a big cause of why he, never married again or had another significant romantic relationship. So, what does this all mean? We can have, as well as me, from a past life regression healing standpoint, if
Mhm.
there's big energy that has not been worked through and finished up in a lifetime, it just carries forward at the soul level.
Right. Right.
So, and those were part of the proofs that were shown to me of, because it was hard to take in that I had been Joe DiMaggio. So my guides just being, they're so patient. I mean, we can just be so stubborn, so dense, and just don't want to. So one of the things they did was they showed me this very odd injury that I had to my right foot. And I was having a lot of pain with my right foot. I actually ended up having to have 2 surgeries on it. I had dislocated toes. I didn't do a sport. I didn't fall. There was just no reason. I'm like, what the heck is going on with my poor right foot? And when I was having trouble recuperating after the second foot surgery, I asked my guides and I said, what's going on with the right foot? And they said, it's trapped energy. And I said, well, how do I release the energy? What's the problem? So they took me through multiple different past life releases with right foot injury. And then finally they said, look on the internet, Google, look for a picture of Joe DiMaggio at bat. And I'm like, what? Okay. I don't understand, but sure, that's clear. I'll do that. The minute I saw it, Sharon, I got it of why they were sending me to that. Joe had this really unusual batting stance, and he was incredibly wide-legged at bat, getting ready to, try and power hit. I mean, he was known for his home runs and for, his triple plays, etc. But he's got his legs really far apart, and he's got the right foot all the way on the toes, just like stomped into the ground.
Mm.
And I'm sure cleats were not great back in the, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Sports equipment just wasn't as good as it is now. And I could just see my poor toes
Yeah.
jammed in there. And the podiatrist had actually said to me, he said, did you do some sport that was very different use of your 2 feet? He's like, did you ever do ballet, soccer, baseball? And I was like, huh, not in this life. So, but the minute I saw that photo that my guides told me, I was like, okay, I get it. And we should not be carrying past life um, energy and emotions and injuries like that with us.
Right.
And one of the other things Joe mentioned was, oh my goodness, his elbows. And I wondered about that. And I thought, oh, okay, again, it's the power hitting, it's the throwing, because he was a center fielder. So he's as far out there as you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to see my elbows right now? Not very nice looking right now, because I just took a tumble down the stairs
Oh,
very unexpectedly. So they're all bruised up. Again, it was another energy release. But there were some back issues that there just was a lot of different things. And he kind of like went through his list of some of his injuries and said, Wendy, you don't need to be carrying that energy anymore. So this came up in past life regression sessions with a lot of detail, as well as with me doing direct meditations. And because Sharon, I just didn't know what to do with it. When I
right.
first got this information, I tried to take it on, try it on. It's like, okay, I just love to keep this private. That's what I'd like to do with this information. And I could just see guides like going like this, like
Oh,
shaking their heads, like, no. So it's like, okay, well, then I need help. I need help to disprove or prove this, because I'm not here to have this be about my ego. And as I said, as a Canadian female, this was not on my checklist of people to try and claim to be. Just
yeah.
wasn't. Just
Writing a book about Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe. I imagine that wasn't one of your.
it just was not. It was just not on my wish list.
Yeah.
So What I did was I had a wonderful new friend who was a quantum healing hypnotherapist, and she'd trained with Dolores Cannon. And I knew she was wonderfully spiritually connected. I also knew she was just really level-headed. And I didn't think she liked sports at all. I didn't think she was a sports fan. So those were kind of some of the reasons I chose her. And I knew I would get a lot of great information directly from the divine, from my own higher self, from my guides, and that my ego would be very balanced and my heart would be open during that sort of a session. So
Mhm.
I asked her if she would do a session for me. She said, absolutely. So I did not put on my question list because you can submit a question list to your hypnotherapist of things you want help with. I
Mhm.
certainly didn't put on there anything about either Joe or Marilyn. I kind of had like a little minor softball question in amongst many other things. Have I ever been a professional athlete? That was the only question I had in there. Well, we didn't even get to my questions because what happened in the very first session was I immediately went into Joe's childhood. And it was lovely. I mean, he was playing stickball with the neighborhood kids, and then he, ran home when he's like called home for dinner. And this big, happy, energetic, wonderful Italian American family with all these sisters and brothers and just amazing parents. And they're all jammed into this tiny little home. And just, she just led me through the questions. I couldn't believe all the detail that came out of it. And I was using words, Sharon, that I don't know. For instance, Joe said, well, I'm going down to play on the corner sandlot. Well, I didn't know what a sandlot was. I don't know that. I don't know that expression. I grew up in Quebec. We don't have sand lots like he was describing. We're in Northern California. But when I Googled it, and talked to a friend who was from California, she says, oh, sure. She's like the corner sand lot. That's where the kids go and play. It's an empty lot and it might be, sandy and grassy both. It was exactly like he described. So it was really a wonderful session. And we also got to the point of she took me all the way through that lifetime and just took me to the point of his death scene and any regrets and just really the overview of everything that had happened in that life. And we had, our soul had a lot
Mhm.
of angst over the failed first marriage because he just took it very seriously because divorce was not common among Catholics, particularly in that time frame. But he and his first wife, Dorothy, just could not work it out, and she just couldn't accept the career and him being gone and traveling so much. And they couldn't work it out over time. So just, to go through that, but to also go through
Mhm.
the joy of his son being born and just to, hear my voice, on the recording. There just was so much joy in that child being born. And then, just the big things in life, him
Right.
being drafted to the Yankees, who were his favorite team. And picture, this young man who's not especially sophisticated, early 20s, lived in Northern California his whole life. His father's a fisherman. His mother is a homemaker for this big, wonderful, noisy family. And that was a huge job with 9 kids. I can't imagine.
Either.
But then to go to drive all the way across the country and to drive to New York City and to be staying there and playing for the New York Yankees, it just was a really, really big deal. So
Mhm.
to hear him talk about the American dream, And also, what was a bit unusual was two of his older brothers also got to play professional baseball. And that's pretty unheard of to have three brothers, all in the majors in one sport.
Hmm.
So it was just a big deal and very mystifying to their father is like, why are you not fishermen? What do you bring to this game? You can't make a living from a game.
Yeah, how come you don't have a real job?
You
Right.
need a real job. So I just did not understand. So just, the ups and downs, and it just was incredible to, go through all those memories and experiences, and to see how some of those were holding me back now. It just
Mm,
really was a gift to be releasing the physical pain
right.
and healing that came through, also the emotional angst. And what came up was that I was blocking myself now in this lifetime without realizing it from having a wonderful romantic partner, because I was still punishing myself from what had gone wrong between Joe and Marilyn in their
Mm,
marriage.
yeah.
So,
As I was reading the book, he seemed to be like a guide for you as he was coming through. Right.
yes, he absolutely became a guide as I got more comfortable with his energy, because I wanted to know. You want to know that a guide has wisdom to share with you and that they're an appropriate guide, because we can occasionally have ancestors come in that kind of have their own agenda, and they're not wise enough, and they're not at the point. Or in this case, it was a past life. So the ancestor was me.
Right.
So, which is, like a little bit different twist on that. So, so certainly I have many, many other guides. But yeah, over time, I thought, yeah, he really does have wisdom to share, and really does have my best interest at heart, because that's what you want to
Right.
look for, is
Hmm.
their heart fully open and loving toward you, and are they going to love you unconditionally and without judgment, and do they have wisdom to share? That's kind of like my checklist. How about
Sure.
you,
Yeah.
Sharon? What do you think is important in a guide for people to understand that?
Oh, definitely wisdom and um, well, a lot of things like you said. Number one, of course, is that I feel good when they come around,
Right,
that
right,
they make me feel
absolutely,
good, and that yeah,
absolutely.
and so I mean, I work my guide now, of course, is if anyone has read my book, which here it is, by the way, Awakened Soul,
Yes.
is Yeshua.
And
Yeah.
your book is so special, and it's just I love the crossover that we have,
I
between
know.
our books and our guides and relationships, with Yeshua and with Mary Magdalene,
Right.
and some others. So it's just really special to me. So I had this incredible session. So much healing came forward, and then I tripped myself up, because my ego, it wasn't like I was getting a big head from it. It was the opposite. It was like, oh, this is too big for
Mhm.
me. I don't know what to do with this. Because as I said, just so well known, and so well respected. So what I did was I chose to have another session, different hypnotherapist, and that became the surprising theme of the book, was me having these incredible sessions with multiple different hypnotherapists. Never said a thing to any of them about Joe DiMaggio, because I didn't want to presuppose that that's what was going to come up during my session. I really feel it's important to just surrender to whatever's going to be the most beneficial to us and for our highest and holiest. I don't think we should go in with an agenda. And also, I didn't want to influence any of the hypnotherapists.
Right.
So That's what came up. And as I said, just this incredible detail. And then a big turning point was I had the perfect client referred to me for me to do a past life regression with her.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about too, and because that was really that first time you had that session with her were super profound, and I felt that as I was reading that experience. Yeah.
Yes. So it was a young woman in Europe that was referred to me. And I chose that we would have a phone interview together before agreeing to do this session, because English was not her native language. And I wanted to make sure that we communicated well enough together to have a productive session. Also, she was quite young. So I wanted to make sure that expectations just made sense and that she understood what we would be doing and what we wouldn't be doing.
Mhm.
And again, just no mention of Joe, because this was going to be her session. This is the point of it. It's for her. But she went back immediately, and she had told me on the phone that she was having issues with anxiety, with depression, and that she had memories dating back to childhood, once again back to childhood, that seemed to be around Marilyn Monroe. And again, she's over in Europe, so it's not like she's been, overly influenced by the American culture around Marilyn Monroe. But Marilyn Monroe at this point has become such a beloved icon and just aspect of the divine feminine, I think. I
Right.
feel in so many ways that she's really has worldwide appeal. But regardless, again, not an American. Um, so we did agree to do the session together and scheduled it. But she went straight into that life. And what happened as we progressed through it was we did get to the place of her talking about her relationship with Joe and talking about the relationship with him and how they married and just the various roles that they had together. And Sharon, it was profound because I had to do everything I could, as you could read in the book, to just keep my
Yeah.
therapist hat on, because I'm like silently just bawling through some of it. Because when she talked about forgiving him for having regrettably he struck her
Mhm.
during their marriage. He had hit her and just felt so profoundly sorry for that and could not apologize enough. But it just broke her heart. She just could not get over it. She couldn't trust him again after that, because it just triggered her back to childhood abuse and neglect. She had a very hard life, a very, very challenging life, and people may not, be aware of that history. But she did. She had a mother who was mentally ill, so she was not able to live with her mother most of the time. She didn't know who her father was. So it
Mm.
just was really, really a difficult childhood. And Marilyn talked about feeling so embarrassed because she was filming at the point when Joe had hit her,
Yeah.
and she had to show the makeup department and ask them to cover it up. And I'm sure there were, some raised eyebrows or questions around it, and she just felt humiliated. So she did file for divorce. So they were married less than a year. And it just was, I think, pretty heartbreaking for both of them, because Joe, he just didn't have any model. Picture this being back in the 1950s, and his model of a wife is, I'm going to take care of you, and you're going to be in the home and take care of the home, and hopefully we'll have children together if that's meant to be. He already had his son, but Marilyn was never able to have children, and that wasn't her destiny. That is not what she wanted to do. She needed to be able to make films and to sing and dance and entertain and be the comedic talent that she was in so many ways. So they just couldn't reconcile it. So I think that was pretty heartbreaking. So when that client, as Marilyn said to Joe in the session, I forgive you. I
Hmm.
don't hate anyone. I have no reason to hate anyone. It took the weight of the world off my shoulders in so many ways, because I was still carrying
Yeah.
some guilt from that,
Yeah.
some guilt, some shame, some embarrassment, just the horror of having struck the person that you love so much. That's
Right.
just a terrible feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel it now. I could,
Yes.
it's so, thank you for sharing that so much. It's so amazing and it confirms the work we do, how we don't know why we feel a certain way. We just don't. But we carry that, that pain with us from other lifetimes. And I pray and pray that mainstream psychology will one day, or psychotherapy or whatever, or counseling will one day understand that it's not just this lifetime that
Right.
the pain that we have, that one day we'll be
It
able
can be
to,
inexplicable, actually makes
yeah,
perfect sense when you
yes,
start to look at it from the larger perspective, when you start to
mhm,
look at it from the soul perspective, and
right,
the soul's memory is eternal. But, we agree to the veil of amnesia. And when we come in here, just the density of the planet, and our own stubbornness or whatever other personality or character issues we might be working through can just make it
right.
really, really hard.